Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatvam Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Praptasya Kalyanam Guranavasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Praptasya Kalyanam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Mahaprabhu ki Tananitya Gita Vaditra Madhyam Manasurasena Mahaprabhu Romanchakam Pasru Taranga Baju Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Shri Vigrahara Dhananityanana Shringaratanma Diramarjanado Juktasya Bhaktamsya Niyunjatopi Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavat Prasado Svattvanatruptam Hari Bhakta Sangam Chaturvidha Shri Kridvaiva Trupte Bhajata Shadeva Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Shiradikama Davayara Para Madhurya Leela Gunarupa Namna Pratikchanasa Dhanalalupasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Ne kunjayono Rati kelisi dhyai Jajali veri jokte apekshaneya Jono rati kelisi dhyai Tatrati daksha Ativalavasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Sakshadhari Dvaina Samasta Shashri Ruktastatava Vyataiva Sadvi Kintu Pravarja Priya Eva Tasa Vande Gura Shri Charanara Vrindam Yasya Prasada Bhagavat Prasado Yasya Prasadam Nagati Kutapi Yasya Prasadam Nagati Kutapi Dhyayam Stovam Tasya Yasatri Sandhyam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitina Vine Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunavadi Pachatyade Shatarine Namaste Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gora Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare. Hare Yaraya Nama Krishna Jadavaya Nama. Jadavaye Madhavaya Kesavaye Namah. Hare Gopal Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudan. Giridhari Gopinath Madana Mohan. Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Sita. Hare Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita. Shri Rupa Sanatan Vattaraguna. Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasaraguna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Nitai Gora Haribo, 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 Nitai Gora Haribo. Haribo, Nitai Gora Pramanande. Jai Vishnupada Paramahansa Prabhupada Jakacharya Sutra Srasi Srimad. His Divine Grace of Bhojravina Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Pratishta Bhiviti Samstapakachar Vaishnava Siramani Patita Pavana Srila Prabhupada Ji Maharaj Ki Jai. Shri Gauriya Guru Varga Patita Udhari Ki Jai. Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunatha Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Guna Satgoswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Nama Acharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ji Ki Jai. Ananta Kuti Vaishnava Vrindi Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrindi Ki Jai. जय परम दयाल से नित्यानंद प्रभु की जय. प्रेम नाम संकीर्तन एक जनक प्रेम पुरुषोत्तम श्री सच्चिदानंद श्रीमन गौरांग चैतन्य महाप्रभु गौर हरि मावरणाय अवतार की जय. गोलोकेर प्रमदान हरि नाम संकीर्तन जय की जय. जुग धर्म हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र की जय. बृहत् नितांग ट्रांसलेटर बुक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सेवा की जय. श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपिनाथ राधा कुंड श्याम कुंड गिरिराज गोवर्धन की जय. श्री ब्रज वृंदावन मथुर धाम की जय. तेलो शिव श्री राधा नीलमाधव की जय. श्री मायापुर नवद्वीप एक चक्र धाम की जय. परम करुण श्री गौर निताय की जय. श्री पुरुषोत्तम कित्र जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय. श्री जगन्नाथ स्वामी बलदेव प्रभु श्रीमद देवी सुदर्शन चक्र भगवान की जय. सीताराम लक्ष्मण भक्त हनुमान जी की जय. भक्ति सर्व विघ्न विनाशना कर्ण सिंह भगवान की जय. जगंगा माई जमुना माई की जय. तुलसी महारानी वृंदे देवी भक्ति देवी की जय. श्री मति राधारानी की जय. समवेत भक्त वृंद की जय. निताय गौरी प्रमानंदे हरि बोल. All glories to the Assembly bodies. All glories to the Assembly bodies. All glories to the Assembly bodies. All glories, all glories, all glories to Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga.
प्रहलाद लाददायिने हिरण्यकशिपो वक्षः शीलटङ्गानकारये इतो नरसिंह परतो नरसिंह यतो यतो यामि ततो नरसिंह बहि नरसिंह हृदये नरसिंह नरसिंहपदिं शरणं प्रपद्ये तव करकमलवरे नाथा अद्भुतशृङ्गा दलिता हिरण्यकशिपु तनुभृङ्गा केशवदिता हरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे केशवदिता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद नरसिंहदेव भगवान की भक्त शिरोमणि प्रहलाद महाराज की Tulasi Krishna Prayasi Namo Namah. Tulasi Krishna Prayasi Namo Namah.
Tulasi Krishna Prayasi Namo Namah.
Shri Radha Krishna Seva Pavo Eya Bilasi.
Radha Krishna Seva Pavo Eyo Bilasi.
Tomara Sharanaloy Taravancha Punaoy
Chaitamara Sharanala Taravancha Purna
Kipakori Korotare Vrindavanavasi.
Tumi kripa kori karatare Vrindavanavasi.
Kripa kori korotare Vrindavanavasi.
Tumi kripa kori karatare Vrindavanavasi.
Moraeya Vilas Vilas Kunjeriova.
Moraeya Vilas Vilasa Kunja Diyava.
Moraeya Vilas Vilas Kunjeriova.
Moraeya Vilas Vilasa Kunja Diyava.
Nayane Ribo Sada Yugala Ruparasi.
Aminayane Vasara Jogala Ruparasi.
Nayane Ribo Sada Yugala Ruparasi.
Aminayane Vasara Jogala Ruparasi.
Nivedana Dara Sakiranugata Koro.
Nivedana Dhara Sakirayano Gatakara.
Nivedana Dara Sakiranugata Koro.
Nivedana Dhara Sakirayano Gatakara.
Seva Adhikara Diye Koro Nijadasi.
Seva Yadikara Diye Kara Nijadasi.
Dina Krishna Krishna Rase Koi Namora Oi.
Dina Krishna Dase Koi Namora.
Dina Krishna Dase Koi Namora Oi.
Dina Krishna Dase Koi Namora.
Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sada Jina Vasi.
Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sada Vasi.
Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sada Jina Vasi.
Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sada Vasi.
Yani Kani Chapa Pani Brahma Atyarikani Cha Tani Tani Prana Shanti Parakshina Pare Pare.
Yani Kani Shapa Pani Brahma Tarikani Sa Tani Tani Prana Santi Parakshina Pare Pare.
Yani Kani Chapa Pani Brahma Atyarikani Cha Tani Tani Prana Shanti Parakshina Pare Pare.
Yani Kani Shapa Pani Brahma Tarikani Sa Tani Tani Prana Santi Parakshina Pare Pare.
Yani Kani Chapa Pani Brahma Atyarikani Cha Tani Tani Prana Shanti Parakshina Pare Pare.
Yani Kani Shapa Pani Brahma Tarikani Sa Tani Tani Prana Santi Parakshina Pare Pare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jaya Tosi Maharani, Jaya Vinda Devi, Jaya Tosi Maharani, Jaya Vinda Devi.
Jaya Tusi Maharani, Jaya Brinda Devi, Jaya Tusi Maharani, Jaya Brinda Devi.
Jaya Vinde, Jaya Vinde, Jaya Vinde, Jaya Shri Vinde.
Jaya Brinde, Jaya Brinde, Jaya Brinde, Jaya Brinde.
Nitai Gora Haribo, 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 Nitai Gora Haribo.
Nitai Gora Haribo, 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 Nitai Gora Haribo.
Shrimati Tosi Maharani Vinda Devi Ki Jai.
Jai Shri Vrindai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Shatavatai Namo Namaha. Vrindayai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Shatavatai Namo Namaha. Vrindai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Shatavatai Namo Namaha. Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. O Tulasi, beloved Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire to obtain the service of Shri Radha Krishna. Making resident of Vrindavan. My desire that you also give me a residence, pleasure groves of Shri Vrindavan. That's within my vision. I will always behold beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower with paradise as a bride. Please give me the privilege of devotion service. Glory to the Shri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart with the just sacraments for years, and extinguishes the fire of personal life for the beauty of birth and death. This Sankirtana is the prime benediction for humanity at large, for it spreads the rage and benediction moon. It is the life of all friends, names of knowledge. It increases the ocean of bliss and enables us to possess the nectar which we always anxious for Malud. Your holy name alone can render all benedictions to the beings. And as you have hundreds of millions of names like Krishna and Govind, and these transcendental names, you have invested all the transcendental angels. It's not even hard, it's just food for chant. Out of kindness, you may enable us to easily approach you by your holy names. But I'm so unfortunate I have no abstraction for them. Once we change the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, think oneself the Lord in sovereignty, one should be more turning than victory, and devoid all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can change the holy name of the Lord constantly. For Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire to
number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service birth after birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda, Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yet somehow or other I fall into this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love, flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up, and when will the hairs on my body stand on end at the recitation of your holy name? O Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering the moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I am feeling all vacant in the world of absence. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and he shall remain so even if his hand is corrupted by his embrace. What makes me broken hearted by not being present before me? He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord and unconditional. Shri Chaitanya Siksastikam. Namaste Saraswati Devi. Namaste Saraswati. Dhananjay, you know what happened to my my copy of this? People keep taking it. Is that it? Srimad Bhagavatam, Grantaraj Ki. Oh, this, go ahead. One second. No. Their names of demigods like Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, to be equal to our independent names of Lord Vishnu. Disobey the orders of spiritual master. Blaspheme the Vedic literature, learn from pursuance of the Vedic version. To consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna's imagination. To give some interpretation on the holy name of the Lord. To commit sinful activities on the strength of chanting the holy name of the Lord. Consider the chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which are offered in Vedas as fruitive activities or karmakanda. To instruct the faithless person about the glories of the holy name. To not have complete faith in the chanting of the holy names. And to maintain material attachments even after understanding so many instructions in this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be a Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 offenses. In order to quickly achieve the desired success, Krishna Prema. Now let us offer our most humble obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. They are just like desired trees that can fulfill the desires of everyone, and therefore with compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Vanchakalpa Tadabhischa, Vipasinubhyecha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo, Namo Namaha, Vaishnava Thakur Ki. Srimad Bhagavatam Grantaraj Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Janmadyasya yato nivayad itaratas chartesu avigyaswarat. Tene Brahma Hridaya Likavaye Muyantiyat Surayaha. Tejo Varimadam Yata Vinimayo Yatra Trisargo Mesha. Damna Svena Sada Nirasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Dimahi. Oh, can I see that, Prabhu? Can I see that? Let me take a look at that. This looks like my stuff here. Yeah, this is it. So here, just. O my Lord, Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva.
O my Lord, Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva.
O all-pervading personality, God.
O all-pervading personality, God.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto you.
Offer my respectful obeisance unto you.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute
and the primeval cause of all causes.
and the primeval cause of all
Of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of manifested
of the
universe.
creation, sustenance, destruction, manifestation.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
Directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
And he is independent because there is no other cause
And
beyond
he's
him.
independent because there's no other cause
It is
beyond
he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of
him.
Brahma,
It is the only person part of big knowledge and the heart of
the original living
the
being.
original living being.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion. As one is bewildered by the illusory representations of water seen in fire or land seen on water. Only because of him do the material universes, temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature, appear factual, although they are real. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna, who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode, which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. Dharma projita kaichavocha, paramo nirmatsaranam satam, vedyam vastavam atra vastu, Shivedanta patrayon mulanam, Shrimad Bhagavate Mahamani Krite, Kim Vaparir Ishvaraha, Sadyo Hridi Avuridyate Kriti Bihi Susursavistakshana. Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated. This Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. Such truth uproots the threefold miseries. This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in its maturity, is sufficient in itself for God realization. What is the need of any other scripture? As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam, by this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is established within his heart. Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam, sukumukad amrita dravya samyatam, pibata bhagavatam rasam alayam, muhur aho raskabu vibhavakaha. O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desired tree of Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful. Although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. Shinvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hridyantak Stohi Bhadrani Vidunoti Suhit Satam. To hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures, or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita, is itself righteous activity. And for one who hears about Krishna, Lord Krishna, who is dwelling in everyone's heart, acts as a best wishing friend, and purifies the devotee who constantly engaged in hearing of him. Nastapresu abhadresu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati samasloke bhaktir bhavati naistiki. In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge. As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam and from the devotees, he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord. Tadarajastamo bhava kamalobadayaschaye cheta itaranavidam stitvam sattve prasidati. By development of devotional service, one becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance, and thus material lust and avarice are diminished. Evam prasana manaso bhagavat bhakti yogataha bhagavat tattva vijnanam mukta sangasya jayate. When these impurities are wiped away, the candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness, becomes enlivened by devotional service, and understands the science of God perfectly. Vidyate hridaya grantis, chidyante sarvasamsaya, siyante jashikarmani, trista evat manishvare. Thus, Bhakti Yoga severs the hard knot of material affection, and enables one to come at once to the stage of a samsayam samagram, understanding of the supreme absolute truth personality of Godhead. Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness Can one understand the science of Krishna?
Can one understand the science of
Shishi Guru Vastika Ki Jai. The spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy, just as a cloud pours water on a forest fire to extinguish it.
the spiritual master is receiving a benediction from the ocean of mercy, just like cloud for waters and the forest fire to extinguish.
So the spiritual master delivers the materially afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence.
So the spiritual master delivers the material afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of
I
material.
offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master who is an ocean of auspicious qualities.
Offer my respectful obeisance unto the Lord through such a spiritual master who is an ocean of
Chanting the holy name, dancing in ecstasy, singing and playing musical instruments.
sending the holy name.
The spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
The spiritual master is always gladdened by the sanctity of the Lord Chaitanya.
Because he is relishing the mellows of pure devotion within his mind.
Because the relation develops good devotion.
Sometimes his hair stands on end.
Sometimes his head stand on end.
He feels quivering in his body.
The quivering his body.
He feels quivering in his body, and tears flow from his eyes like waves.
And tears flow from his eyes like
I
waves.
offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
Offer my respectful obeisance to the lotus feet of such a spiritual
The
master.
spiritual master is always engaged in the temple worship of Shishi Radha and Krishna.
The spiritual master is always engaged in the temple worship of Shishirada.
He also engages his disciples in such worship.
He also engages his disciples in such worship.
They dress the deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments,
They use the deeds in beautiful clothes and
clean their temple,
clean the
and
temple.
perform other similar worship of the Lord.
Perform other
I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual
offer my
master.
respectful obeisance to the Lord to such a spiritual master.
The spiritual master is always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food.
The spiritual master is always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious.
Analyzes that which is licked, chewed, drunk, and sucked.
Another that which is the children.
When the spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavad Prasad,
When the spiritual master sees that the body is satisfied by eating Bhagavad Prasad,
he is satisfied.
he is
I
satisfied.
offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a
Offer my
spiritual
respectful
master.
obeisance to the Lord to such a spiritual master.
The spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited conjugal pastimes of Radhika and Madhava.
The spiritual master is eager to hear and chant about unlimited conscious pastimes of Radhika and Madhava.
And their qualities, names, and forms.
And the body's names and
The
form.
spiritual master aspires to relish these at every moment.
The spiritual master aspires to release these.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
Offer my respectful obeisance to the lotus feet of such a spiritual
The
master.
spiritual master is very dear because he is expert at assisting the gopis who at different times make different tasteful arrangements for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs within the groves of Vrindavana.
The spiritual master is very dear because he's expert in assisting the gopis who in different times make different tasteful arrangements for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs within the
I
grove.
offer my most humble obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
Offer my respectful humble obeisance unto the lotus feet of such
The
a
spiritual master is to be honored as much as the Supreme Lord because he is the most confidential servitor of the Lord.
spiritual master is to be honored and blessed by the Supreme Lord because he's the most confidential servant.
This is acknowledged in all revealed scriptures and followed by all
This
authorities.
is acknowledged in all revealed scriptures and followed by all authorities.
Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master who is the bona fide representative of Shri Hari Krishna.
Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisance to lotus to such a spiritual master who is a bona fide representative of Shri Hari Krishna.
By the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna.
By the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction.
Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advance.
Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make it.
Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master.
Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual
At least 3 times a day, I should offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of my spiritual
master. At
master.
least 3 times a day, I should offer my respectful obeisance to the Lord of my spiritual master.
Shri Brahma Samhita Ki Jai, Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachitananda Vigraha Anadiradi Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam.
Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchitananda Vigraha Anadiradi Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam.
Chintamani Prakasatma Sukalpa Vriksha
Chintamani Prakasatma
Lakshavri Subsurabhira Vipaliyantam
Lakshya Viteshishwarabhira Vipalayam
Lakshmi Sahasra Satasambrahma Sevyamanam
Lakshmi Sahasrasata Sambrahma Sevyamanam
Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Venam Kranantam Haravinda Dalayataksham
Venu Kvanantam Aravinda Dayara
Parhavatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam
Param Vatasam Sitam Vidasundara
Kandarpa Kotikamaniya Vishesha Sobham
Kandarpa Kotika Maniya Vishesha
Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindamadi Purusham
Alola Chandra Kalasadvanamaya Vamsi
Alola Chandra Kala Sarvanamaya
Ratnam Gadam Pranayakeli Kalavilasam
Ranang Adam Pranaya Keli Kalavina
Shyamam Tribanga Lalitani Yata Prakasam
Syamam Tribhangala Ritani
Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami. Angani Yasya Sakalendriya Vrittimanti. Pasyanti Panti Kalyanti Chiram Jaganti. Ananda Chinmaya Sadujvala Vigrahasya. Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami. Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Ananta Rupam. Adyam Purana Purusham Navayovanam Cha. Vedesa Durlabham Adurlabham Atma Bhakto. Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami. Pantastu Koti Satavatsara Sampragamyo. Vayoratapi Manaso Munipungamanam. Sopyasti Yat Prapadasimya Vichintya Tattve. Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami. Ekopya Sora Chaitam Jagadanda Kotim. Yaschaktirasti Jagadanda Chaya Yadanta. Ananda Chinmaya Sadujvala Vigrahasya. Anantarasta Paramanu Chayantarastam. Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami. Yat Bhava Bhavita Diyo Manajasta Taiva. Samprapya Rupa Mahima Sanayana Bhusaha. Suktaryameva Nigama Pratitaistuvanti. Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami. Ananda Chinmaya Rasatpati Bhavitabis. Tabirya Eva Nijarupa Taya Kalabi. Goloka Eva Nivasata Kilatma Bhuto. Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami. Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena. Santak Sadeva Hidayesu Vilokayanti. Yam Shama Sundaram Achintyas Gunaswarupam. Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami. Ramadi Murti Sukalani Amenatistan. Nana Avatara Makarod Bhuvane Sukintu. Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Paramaha Pumamyo. Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami. Yasya Prabha Prabhuto Jagadanda Koti. Koti Swasesu Vasudadi Vibhuti Binam. Tad Brahmaniskalam Anantam Asesa Bhutam. Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami. Maya Hiyasya Jagadanda Satani Sute. Trigunyatad Vishayaveda Vitayamana. Sattva Valambi Parasattvam Visuddha Sattvam. Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami. Ananda Chinmaya Rasat Mataya Manasu. Ya Praninam Pratifulam Smanatam Upetya. Lilayatena Bhuvanani Jaya Jasram. Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami. Golokanamni Nijadamni Talechatasya. Devi Mahesa Haritama Sute Sutesu. Te Te Prabhava Nichaya Vitaschayena. Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami. Shristi Stiti Pralayasada Vasaktireka. Chayeva Yasya Bhavanani Vibharti Durga. Ichana Rupam Apiyasya Chachesta Tesa. Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami. Shiram Yata Dadi Vikara Visesa Yoga. Sanjayate Nahitata Pritakasti Hetoho. Yasambutam Apitata Samapaiti Karyat. Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami. Dipachadeva Hitasantaram Abhyapetya. Dipayate Vivita Hetu Samanu Dharma. Yat Tadrigeva Hicha Vishnu Taya Vibhati. Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami. Yakarna narna vajale bhajati sma yoga. Nidramananta jagaranda saroma kupaha. Adhara shaktim avalambya param swamurtim. Govindam adi purisham tamaham bhajami. Yasyaika nisvasita kalam atavalambya. Jivanti loma vilaja jagadanda nataha. Vishnur mahansahi yasya kalabhishesho. Govindam adi purisham tamaham bhajami. Paswan yatasma sakaleshu nijesu tejaha. Swiyam kiyat prakatiyat apitadvadatra. Ramaya esa jagadanda vidana karta. Govindam adi purisham tamaham bhajami. Yat pada palava yugam vinidaya kumbha. Dvandve pranama samaye sa ganadi rajaha. Samaye sa. Vignam vihantam alamasya jagatrayasya. Govindam adi purisham tamaham bhajami. Agnir mahi gaganamambu marudisasya. Kalas tadatma manasiti jagatrayani. Yasmad bhavanti vibhavanti vishanti yamcha. Govindam adi purisham tamaham bhajami. Yaschaksuresa savitasa kalagrahanam. Raja samasta suramurti rasesa tejaha. Yasya gaya brahmati sambrita kala chakra. Govindam adi purisham tamaham bhajami. Dharmota papa nichaya srutayasta pamsi. Brahmadi kita patagava dayascha jivaha. Yadatta matra vibhava prakata prabhava. Govindam adi purisham tamaham bhajami. Yastrindra gopa matavendra mahosva karma. Bandhanu rupa falabhajana matanoti. Karmani nirdhati kintu cha bhakti bhajam. Govindam adi purisham tamaham bhajami. Yam krodha kama sahaja pranayadi vitti. Vatsalya moha guru gora vasevya bhavahai. Sanchintya tasya sadrisim tanamapurete. Govindam adi purisham tamaham bhajami. Shiyakanta kanta parama purusha kalpataravo. Druma bhumish chintamani ganamayi toyam amritam. Kata ganam natyam gamanam apivam sipriyasaki. Chidanantam jyoti param apitad asvadyam apicha. Sayatra shiradi bihi shravati surabhi bhyascha sumahan. Nime sardakyuva vrajati nahiyatrapi samaya. Vajasvita dvipam tamaham iha golakamitiyam. Vitantaste santakshiti viralachara katipaye. Shishupanishadi ki jai om purnam ada purnam idam purnat purnam udachyate purnasya purnama daya purnameva vasishyate. Ishavaishyam idam sarvam jatkinja jagatyam jagat tena taktena bunjitaha mahagritaha krisasviddanam. Kurvan evaha karmani jajiva chakchitam samaha evam tvayi nanyatetosti na karma lipyate nare. Asurya namate loka andena tamasavritaha tamste pratya vigachanti yeke chatmahano janaha. Anijarika manaso javyo nena devam apravam pravam asata davato nyananteti sista tasmin apamata viswadadati. Tadejati tanejati tadure tadvantike tadantarasya sarvasya tadu sarvasya syavayataha. Yastu sarvani bhutani atmani evanupasyati sarvabhutesa chatmanam tato na vijagupsate.
Yatu sarvani bhutani atmani evam shanti sarvabhuteshu chatmanam tato
Yasmin
navigam
sarvani bhutani atmeva bhut taha tatrako mahakasoka ekatvam anupasyataha.
Yami sarvani bhutani atmava bhutvijanataha tatra kumatatam shoka etavam anupapsataha.
Saprayagachukamakayam avrinam asnavidam sudam apapavidam kavir manisi paribhu swayambhu yatatat yitorutan vyadadach jasvatipyaha samabhyaha.
Sapracha sudam akaryam apranam asnavidam sudam apavidam kavimanishi paribhusam bhubhu yatariyo jatistam.
Yatatat yitorutan vyadadach jasvatipyaha samabhyaha antam tamaha pravisanti yevidyam upasyate tato bhuyavite tamo yayu rataha.
Anatama Punishanti Yevidyam Upapsati Tato Bhuya Evati Tamo Yavuyadarataha.
Anyad evahuvidyaya anyada huravidyaya iti susrumadiranam yenastad vichachakshire.
Anyatasma Pramash Iti Susmadir Dharam Yashastad
Vidyam cha yasyastad vedobhayam saha vidyaya miritam tirpa vidyayam ritamastute.
Vidyam cha Yastad Vedodayam Saha Ipadyam Ritum Tripra Vidyatma Snute.
Vidyam cha yasyastad vedobhayam saha vidyaya miritam tirpa vidyayam ritamastute.
Vidyam cha Yastad Vidyam Saha Vidyam Ritum Tripra Vidyam Ritam
Antam tamaha pravisanti ye sambhutim upasyate tato bhuyavite tamo sambhutam ritamasnut yasu sambhutam rataha.
Anatama Prasishati Ye Sambutim Upapsati Tato Bhuya Ivati Tamo Sahuja Sambutyarataha.
Anyadevahur sambhavat anyadahur sambhavat iti susrumadiranam yenastad vichachakshire.
Anirvahu Sambhavat Anyaravuja Sambhavat Iti Asusunti Gunaham Jinam Ta
Sambhutim chabinasam cha yastad vedobhayam saha vidyaya vinasena mritam tirva sambhutam ritamasnute.
Sambutam Chavina Shamcha Natar Vinodabhaya Chaha Vinachetim Rajum Chipra Sambutirvam
Hiranmayana patrena satyasya pitam mukam tatvam pusamapavrinu satyadharma hitristaye.
Hiranmayena Bhaktina Satyashabitam Mukham Tatvam Pusam Apruvutam Satyadamasatam
Pusanikaseyamasuya prajapatya vyuharasmin samahatejo yatte rupam kalyanattamam tate pasyami yo savaso purushaha sohamasmi.
Pushamikashaya Masurya Prajapatya Vinam Sisme Smurvatijo Jati Tupam Kacham Tamam Tate Pusami Yusha Asu Pushacho
Vayuranilaman vidham atedam pasmantam sariram om kratos smara kritam smara kratos smara kritam smara.
Vayurani Lam Amritam Adena Basmaran Ashasharam Om Kratos Marakitam Smaram Kratos Marakitam
Om Agnenaya Supatara Yasman Vishwani Deva Vayunami Vidvan Yo Dachma Chuhuranamino Buyastam Te Nama Uktim Vidima Om Tassat.
Agnena Yasupatara Yasman Vishantideva Sudhan Vivam Vidustya Asmin Yudu Sadam Eno Uvistam Tiktain Aktin Vidinam.
Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 6, verse number 40 and 41. Visuddham Kevalam Jnanam Pratyak Samyak Avastitam Satyam Purnam Anadyantam Satram Purnam Anadyantam Nirguna Nityam Advayam Rishevedanti Munaya Prasantat Mendriyasayaha Yadatad Ivasat Tarkais Tirodi Yeto Viplutam. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. The personality of Godhead is pure, being free from all contaminations of material things. He is the absolute truth and the embodiment of full and perfect knowledge. He is all-pervading, without beginning or end, and without rival. O Narada, O great sage, the great thinkers can know him when completely freed from all material hankerings and when sheltered under undisturbed conditions of the senses. Otherwise, by untenable arguments all is distorted, and the Lord disappears from our sight. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. By the way, the word untenable means not able to be maintained or defended against attack or objection. So in other words, when you have a point of view that is untenable, no one can attack it. No one can object to it. It is solid truth. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Here is an estimation of the Lord apart from His transcendental activities in the temporary material creations. Mayavada philosophy tries to designate the Lord as contaminated by a material body when He accepts forms of incarnation. So this is the misunderstanding of the Mayavadis. That's why they are the worst operatis, worse than normal atheists or communists or anything like that. They are the worst of the worst. So they claim that Krishna, when He appears in the material world, he appears with a material body. This sort of interpolation is completely denied herein by the explanation that the Lord's position is pure and unalloyed in all circumstances. So interpolation is different than an interpretation. What is an interpolation? It's when you insert something of a different nature into something else. So this sort of interpolation, in other words, they say, well, the Lord, when He appears in this material, He has a material body. That has nothing to do with the Lord's appearance in the material world, because He appears in His original transcendental form. Ajopisam avyatma bhutanam iswaropisam prakritim swam adistaya sambhavami atmamayaya. So if we look at the 4th chapter, verse number 4, it says, although I am unborn and my transcendental body never deteriorates, and although I am the Lord of all living entities, I still appear in every millennium in my original transcendental form. So the Mayavadis got it wrong. They are interpolating something that has nothing to do with the Lord. That this is their expertise. They know how to obfuscate the truth. Look that word up. Obfuscate. O-B-F-U-S-C-A-T-E. According to Mayavada philosophy, the spirit soul, when covered by nescience or ignorance, is designated as jiva. But when freed from such ignorance or nescience, he merges in the impersonal existence of the absolute truth. So again, this is somewhat of a misconception. They're trying to position the jiva to become paramatma. So they say, well, he's covered by nescience or ignorance, he's a jiva. But when freed from such ignorance or nescience, he merges in the impersonal existence of the Lord, of the absolute truth. Well, does that mean he becomes the absolute truth? That's what they're implying. But no, he still is a jiva, even in the Brahma Jyoti. But here it is said that the Lord is eternally the symbol of full and perfect knowledge. This is his specialty, perpetual freedom from all material contaminations. This distinguishes the Lord from the individual common living entities who have the aptitude for being subordinated by nescience or ignorance, and thus becoming materially designated. Well, we see this every day. We see so many of us who are designated by, or materially designated. And we say, oh, I am this or I am that. And we accept these upadis, false identifications. I'm Andhra Pradeshi, I'm Telangana, I am Bangladeshi, I am Pakistani, I am this, I am that. So all these upadis or false designations have nothing to do with who we really are. But as long as we identify in these ways, we are conditioned by the modes of material nature. It's ignorance. In the Vedas, it is said that the Lord is Vijnanam Anandam, full of bliss and knowledge. So Vijnanam means knowledge, and Anandam means bliss. The conditioned souls are never to be compared to Him, meaning Krishna, because such individual souls have the tendency to become contaminated. Although after liberation, a living entity can become one with the same quality of existence as the Lord, his very tendency to become contaminated let's start over. Although after liberation, a living entity can become one with the same quality of existence as the Lord, his very tendency to become contaminated, which the Lord never has, makes the individual living entity different from the Lord. So this is something that the Mayavadis would reject. The living entity is always subordinate to the Lord. There's no way that the living entity becomes the Lord by any yoga or whatever. And then it says, in the Vedas it is said, Sudam apapavidam. That's from the Ishopanishad. The individual Atma becomes polluted by sin, but the Lord is never contaminated by sin. The Lord is compared to the powerful sun. The sun is never contaminated by anything infectious because it is so powerful. On the contrary, infected things are sterilized by the rays of the sun. Similarly, the Lord is never contaminated by sins. On the contrary, the sinful living entities become sterilized by contact with the Lord. This means that the Lord is all-pervading like the sun, and as such, the word pratyak is used in this verse. So what does pratyak mean? It means all-pervading. Nothing is excluded from the existence of the Lord's potential expansions. The Lord is within everything, and He is all-covering also, without being disturbed by the activities of the individual souls. He is therefore infinite, and the living entities are infinitesimal. In the Vedas, it is said that only the Lord alone exists, and all others' existences depend on Him. He is the generating reservoir for everyone's existential capacity. So existential is a word used a lot in philosophy, and it means basically living existence. In other words, we are all endowed with an eternal soul, but our soul is part and parcel of Krishna. That doesn't mean we are Krishna. That means that we are a part of Krishna, and He is the whole, and we are always a part. In the Vedas, it is said that only the Lord alone exists, and all others' existences depend on Him. He is the generating reservoir for everyone's existential capacity. He is the supreme truth of all other categorical truths. He is the source of everyone's opulence, and therefore no one can equal Him in opulence. Being full of all opulences, namely wealth, fame, strength, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation, certainly He is the supreme person, and because He is a person, He has many personal qualities, although He is transcendental to the material modes. We have already discussed the statement Itam Bhuta Guno Hari in Srimad Bhagavatam 1.7.10. That is the Atmarama verse, and it's a very important verse in Krishna consciousness that Lord Chaitanya explained several times, and that verse says, Sutta Goswami said, all different varieties of Atmaramas, those who take pleasure in the Atma, or the spirit self, especially those established on the path of self-realization, though freed from all kinds of material bondage, desire to render unalloyed devotional service unto the personality of Godhead. This means that the Lord possesses transcendental qualities and therefore can attract everyone, including liberated souls. So that's a beautiful verse, and Lord Chaitanya gave many different explanations of it in depth. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya could only give 9 definitions or explanations of that verse. The Lord gave at least, I think, 64. And Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was astounded. He was the greatest scholar of his time. He is the incarnation Brihaspati, the priest of the Devas. But he was his let's say his academic understanding was nowhere compared to Lord Chaitanya. Although he accused the Lord of being a sentimentalist who was not studying the Vedanta, but rather chanting and dancing in the streets like a low-class person. So when he wanted to take Lord Chaitanya under his tutelage to teach him Vedanta, he explained Vedanta for 1 week to the Lord. And the Lord didn't ask one question. So Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was a little surprised. So he said, look, you didn't even ask one question. Do you understand what I said? And Lord Chaitanya said in a very respectful way, but in a very cutting way. He said, well, I understand perfectly the verses you read. I just didn't understand your explanation of them. Which is a nice way of saying you're a nonsense. So Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was taken aback by it. And he said, well, you think you can explain it better than me? He said, well, I don't know if I can explain better, but I can give it a try. And now he goes, without touching any of the 9 explanations of the verse or interpretations of the verse, he gave 64, I think the number is 64, explanations of the verse. And Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, like I said, was astounded. He couldn't understand. And he was confused. How could this young man know all this? That night when he went home, he's praying to Mother Saraswati. He said, what's going on here? I thought I knew something, but this boy, far, outperformed me. And Saraswati revealed to him that he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The next day he went back and surrendered to Lord Chaitanya. And after that he became a staunch devotee of the Lord, so staunch that he started arguing with the Lord about a verse that seemed to imply Mayavad philosophy. So he said, I got to change this word in this verse because this is not good. People will misinterpret it as Mayavad philosophy. And the Lord said, you can't change one word. Every word is perfectly chosen by the Lord. So over and over again, the Lord was correcting Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And Bhattacharya completely surrendered to the Lord and has written beautiful, beautiful poems glorifying Lord Chaitanya. Okay, so then it says here, the Lord is compared to the powerful sun. The sun is never contaminated by anything infectious because it is so powerful. On the contrary, infected things are sterilized by the rays of the sun. Similarly, the Lord is never contaminated by sins. On the contrary, the sinful living entities become sterilized by contact with the Lord. This means that the Lord is also all-pervading like the sun, and as such, the word pratyak is used in this verse. Nothing is excluded from the existence of the Lord's potential expansions. The Lord is within everything, and he is all-covering also, without being disturbed by the activities of the individual souls. He is therefore infinite, and the living entities are infinitesimal. In the Vedas it is said that only the Lord alone exists, and all other existences depend on him. So this is another very important point, because if you study junk philosophy as is taught in colleges today, they talk about primary and secondary qualities. And they say, well, primary qualities of something are things that you can measure, breadth, width, length, and so forth. And secondary qualities are subjective. Like if you're colorblind, then you see something that's actually yellow, but you see it as some kind of dark color, not exactly yellow. So, in other words, that a primary quality is something essential to an object, and a secondary quality is something subjective. Well, that's actually not true. What is true is that Krishna is the primary quality of everything. Without the presence of Krishna, nothing else would exist. Basically, he's saying something like that here. He says that the Lord is within everything, and he is all-covering also, without being disturbed by the activities of the individual souls. He is therefore infinite, and the living entities are infinitesimal. In the Vedas, it is said that only the Lord alone exists, and all other existences depend on him. So the way they define, the so-called philosophers define primary qualities, it's in terms of what you can measure with a tape or a ruler, let's say. But actually, the primary quality of everything is Krishna, because nothing would exist without Krishna's presence. And he is the source of all energies. So, if the devotee understands that Krishna is in everything, and everything is dependent on him, that's the universal vision of Krishna. And the impersonalists and the speculators, like scientists and philosophers, they imagine so many things, and most of what they imagine is wrong. Some things they might have half right. Very seldom do they have anything completely right. So anyone who's educated in modern knowledge and philosophy and things like that are actually misled. They're fed things that are untrue, and by following those things, it ruins their lives. They never achieve perfection in this life. He is a generating reservoir for everyone's existential capacity. In other words, all energies are coming from him. He is the supreme truth of all other categorical truths. He is the source of everyone's opulence, and therefore no one can equal him in opulence. Being full of all opulences, namely wealth, fame, strength, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation, certainly he is the supreme person. And because he is a person, he has many personal qualities, although he is transcendental to the material modes. We have already discussed the statement, Itam Bhuta Guno Hari. This is in the, that's the verse, Srimad Bhagavatam 1.7.10. Let's see what that says. That's the last line of the verse, Itam Bhuta Guno Hari, and it says, such wonderful, one can understand these transcendental qualities of the Lord, or these wonderful qualities of the Lord, by devotional service, basically. That's what it's saying. What? It's Atmarama verse. Yeah, it's the, last line. Srimad Bhagavatam 1.7.10. His transcendental qualities are so attractive that even the liberated souls are also, or the Atmaramas, are also attracted by them. Although possessed of all personal qualities, he is nevertheless omnipotent, meaning all-powerful. Therefore, personally, he has nothing to do, for everything is being carried out by his omnipotent energies. In other words, he has infinite number of energies, and simply by thinking of something, it happens. He doesn't have to do anything, like, go to Home Depot and buy a lot of things and then bring it back and then hire someone to help him put it together. And he doesn't have to do any of that. Just by thinking about something, it happens. So there are two main points here. One is that the Lord has what's called perpetual freedom from sin. This is something that jivas do not have. Jivas have, we all have a tendency to sin, and we do sin, wittingly and unwittingly. And number two, the Lord is all-pervading like the sun. We're not all-pervading. So one cannot compare Krishna to us. We can compare a few of our qualities to Krishna's, some of Krishna's qualities, but not all. And that takes time to understand. Because of the false ego, we want to be equal or greater than the Lord, but it's not possible. He has nothing to do, for everything is being carried out by his omnipotent energies. This is confirmed by the Vedic mantras, Parasya Shaktir Vividaya Vasuyate. Yeah. Also, in the 3rd chapter, there's a very nice verse where Krishna says, Name partastikatavyam trisu loke sukinchana nanavaptam avaptavyam varta evan chakarmani. 3rd chapter, 22nd verse. O son of Prita, Arjuna, there's no work prescribed for me within all these 3 planetary systems. Nor am I in want of anything, nor have I a need to obtain anything. And yet I am engaged in prescribed duties. So this is where the verse, where that line of a verse, Parasya Shaktir Vividaya Vasuyate, appears. It's a quote from the Svatasvatara Upanishad, 6th canto, or 6th chapter, I guess, 7th and 8th verse. Tam Ishwaranam Paramam Maheshwaram, Tam Devatanam Paramam Chadaivatam, Patim Patinam Paramam Purastad, Vidama Devam Bhuvanesham Idyam. Natashikaryam Karanam Cha Vidyate, Natat Samas Cha Vyadikas Cha Drishyate. Parasya Saktir Vividaya Vasuyate Swabhaviki Jnanabala Kriyacha. So the translation of that verse where this Parasya Saktir appears, it says, he does not possess bodily form like that of an ordinary living entity. There's no difference between his body and his soul. So now the Mayavadis are trying to say, no, his body is material. It's complete nonsense. He is absolute. All his senses are transcendental, and any one of his senses can perform the action of any other sense. Therefore, no one is greater than him or equal to him. His potencies are multifarious. That's what that means. Parasya Shakti Vividaya Vasuyate. He has multifarious or infinite potencies, and thus his deeds are automatically performed as a natural sequence. It looks like it's automatically happening, but it's all happening under the control of the Lord. The creation, the maintenance, and the destruction of the material world. And all functions in the material world, the Lord is cognizant of them, and he's controlling them. This suggests his specific spiritual form, which can never be experienced by the material senses. He can be seen only when the senses are purified by devotional service. Yam evaishrinute tena labhya. As such, there are basic differences between the Lord and the living entities in so many respects. So this is absolutely essential for devotees to learn, all these differences between the Lord and the living entity. The Mayavadis want to artificially bring the Lord down to the level of ordinary living beings. That is their, let's say, trick to their philosophy. But it's not a fact. It's another illusion that they're suffering from. That no one can fully understand him is explained also in this verse, but the qualification for understanding to some degree is mentioned here. Only the prasantas, or the unalloyed devotees of the Lord, can know him to a greater extent. So prasanta is one who is satisfied by dint of devotional service of the Lord. He doesn't need anything else, like he doesn't need sense gratification of any kind. And he lives a simple life without any frills and so-called thrills. The thrills of the devotee are hearing and chanting and serving the Lord and remembering the Lord and everything about the Lord. The reason is that the devotees have no demands in their lives but to be obedient servants of the Lord, while all others, namely the empiric philosophers, the mystics, and the fruitive workers, all basically have some demand, and as such, they cannot be pacified. In other words, they're never satisfied, no matter what they get. The fruitive worker wants reward for his work. The mystic wants some perfection of life, and the empiric philosopher wants to merge in the existence of the Lord. Somehow or other, as long as there is a demand for sense gratification, there is no chance for pacification. Okay, pacification is a word, big word that means peace. So as long as one has material desires, they're never really peaceful. They always are running after getting something. Just like in the morning, you see some point the cars come out and they start going whiz, 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 going here and there. Everyone's busy going somewhere, right? And why are they going somewhere? To make money. And why do they want money? To have sense gratification. And once they get sense gratification, are they satisfied? No. This satisfaction only lasts a few seconds, then they want more sense gratification. See? So this is a disease that even devotees have, that they always think like a mercantile person. A mercantile person always looks at how much profit they can make. So there are devotees also that act like that. And one example was in France, this one guru, at one point, he had a great idea. He said, hey, let's make everything based on money. So they had different sections or different responsibilities. Like there was the deity department, there's the Sankirtan department, there's the agricultural department, there's the cow department, there are the scholar department, there was the scholar department. So he came up with this brilliant idea that if the deity department needs one of the scholars to do service, they have to pay the director of the deity department for the time that that person engages in some other activity other than the scholarship. And the same, if Sankirtan people need some of the agricultural people to come out, they have to pay them for their time. So, therefore, everything became skewed. Instead of thinking in terms of devotional service, people began to think in terms of time and money. So sometimes they got into arguments, like the Sankirtan department would say, well, we need about another 20 people to come out. So each one of the directors would calculate in terms of money how much they should pay for those devotees to go out. You can see how ridiculous it is. You know? So it completely destroyed the devotional attitude. And this is going on in ISKCON sometimes. I mean, this was extreme. Of course, that whole plan failed. So, devotional service is not profit, does not have a profit incentive. Devotional service, or pure devotional service, is anyabhilasita sunyam, without any material desire other than to please the Lord. So unless we come to that platform, we are still tainted with materialistic desires and thoughts. So next it says, the reason is that the devotees have no demands in their lives but to be obedient servants of the Lord, while all others, namely the empiric philosophers, the mystics, and the fruitive workers, all basically have some demand. And as such, they cannot be pacified. The fruitive worker wants reward for his work. The mystic wants some perfection of life, and the empiric philosopher wants to merge in the existence of the Lord. somehow or other, as long as there is a demand for sense gratification, there's no chance for pacification. There's no chance for any peace or shanti. On the contrary, by unnecessary dry speculative arguments, the whole matter becomes distorted, and thus the Lord moves still further away from our understanding. The dry speculators, however, because of their following the principles of austerity and penance, can have knowledge of the impersonal features of the Lord to some extent, but there is no chance for their understanding his ultimate form as Govinda, because only the Amala Atmanas, or Amal Atmanas. Amala means pure, no dirt, no contamination, and Atmanas means devotees who are completely engaged in service. Or the completely sinless persons can accept pure devotional service to the Lord, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 7:28. Yesam twantagatam papam jananam punya karmanam te dvandva mohamir mokta vachanti mam jitaratava. So that's a very important verse, 7th chapter, 28th verse, that says, only those who had engaged in devotional service in previous lives and this life, and whose sinful reactions are completely purified or eradicated, are freed from the dualities of delusion and engage themselves in my service with determination. Now, what are these dualities of delusion? That is, let's say someone is sitting in his room, but they're thinking, well, I have to go back to this place, or I have to go over there. And when they get to the other place where they wanted to go, they're sitting, and after some time they say, well, I can't stay in this place. I got to go to this other place. So this is called duality. They're never pacified. They're never peaceful. They always have to, they're a jitterbug, as they say. They can't stay in one place. They have to keep going here, then there, then somewhere else. Or they start and go. Start and go. That means they make some spiritual advancement, and then they engage in sense gratification, and they get diverted for some time. Then they had to come back again, and they start all over from the bottom rung, and they make some advancement, and again they fall down. Then they go away. Then they come back again. So that type of duality, should I be here? Should I be there? Should I do this? Should I do that? They're making decisions based on sense gratification, not based on Krishna consciousness. And because of that, they are never pacified. They're never satisfied. They're always agitated in the mind. Now, this is explained in great depth in the what is it, the 5th chapter. Yeah, it says that they cannot have any peace. Their mind is always disturbed by doing something or other and not being fully satisfied by devotional service. The symptom of a pure devotee is he's completely satisfied by the service itself, whereas the condition of materialists is they're never satisfied. They're always looking for, the grass is greener on the other hill. So this is explained in the Bhagavad Gita. Tasmad agyana sambhutam hitstam janar sinatmana chitvainam samsayam yogam atisto tista bharata. Therefore the doubts which have arisen in your heart out of ignorance should be slashed by the weapon of knowledge. Armed with yoga, O Bharata, stand and fight. So, in the purport, Prabhupada says, one who does not understand the instructions of the Gita is faithless and is to be considered to be misusing the fragmental independence awarded to him by the Lord. In spite of such instructions, one who does not understand the real nature of the Lord as the eternal, blissful, all-knowing personality Godhead is certainly fool number one. Ignorance can be removed by gradual acceptance of the principles of Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is awakened by different types of sacrifices to the demigods, sacrifice to Brahman, sacrifice in celibacy, in household life, in controlling the senses, in practicing mystic yoga, in penance, in foregoing material possessions, in studying the Vedas, and in partaking of the social institution called Varnashram Dharma. All these are known as sacrifice, and all of them are based on regulated action. But within all these activities, the important factor is self-realization. One who seeks that objective is the real student of Bhagavad Gita, but one who doubts the authority of Krishna falls back. One is therefore advised to study Bhagavad Gita or any other scripture under a bona fide spiritual master with service and surrender. A bona fide spiritual master is in a disciplic succession from time internal, and he does not deviate at all from the instructions of the Supreme Lord, so as they were imparted millions of years ago to the sun god, from whom the instructions of Bhagavad Gita have come down to the earthly kingdom. One should therefore follow the path of Bhagavad Gita as is expressed in the Gita itself, and beware of self-interested people after personal aggrandizement who deviate others from the actual path. The Lord is definitely the Supreme Person, and his activities are transcendental. One who understands this is a liberated person from the very beginning of his life very beginning of his study of Bhagavad Gita. So one time, some person came to me and they said, "Prabhu, do you want to make a lot of money to build your new temple?" I said, "Well, yeah, I'd like to." He said, "Oh, I got a great idea for you. It's called getting a downline." I said, "What's that?" He said, "Well, it's Amway. You know, you join this group of sincere people, and they have these products, and you convince others because you're the teacher here. A lot of people come to this temple, and the Indians, and they have money, so you convince them to start becoming members of Amway and buying Amway products, and then they also can have downlines, and you get a check every month from those people that you convince to become members of Amway and to buy their products and to sell them to others." I said, "Oh, I understand." I said, "But do you know that in devotional service we don't do that?" He said, "What do you mean we don't do that?" I said, "We don't do things like that. We're here every day chanting Hare Krishna and offering free prasadam to the people and Bhagavad Gita, and we go on Sankirtan and dance and distribute prasadam and books, and that's our life. We're not trying to have a downline." He couldn't understand, he thought I was crazy. But who's crazy, actually? Right? And he's a devotee. He's a disciple. He has a guru. And he's talking this nonsense. Right? As if we're preaching so that the Indians become our downline. This is nonsense. So there's no such thing. We're not businessmen. We have to get that out of our minds. We're not businessmen. We're devotees. The devotee is not interested in making a profit. The devotee is interested in making devotees and teaching people to be Krishna conscious. Well, if you teach people to become Krishna conscious, Krishna will be pleased, and if you teach them properly, they'll also donate. You don't have to even ask. Okay? But the idea is we're not interested in making money. We're interested in making devotees and establishing Krishna consciousness. So as long as that profit incentive is there, everything will be contaminated in the devotional service. Okay, we'll stop right there. There's, and this verse 7:28 is very important because one has to be completely purified in order to engage in pure devotional service. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Are there any questions?
The word you said, is it the right spelling? You can O-B-F-U-S-C-A-T.
Yeah, what does it mean? It means to hide something, to make it confused.
It says obscure or unclear
Yeah,
or unintelligible or
Yeah.
bewildered.
yeah. So when you hear these big philosophers speak, and they use all this fancy language, or these big scientists, they use all these fancy language, all these words are Greek and Latin words, and they just hide the truth. What is the truth? That Krishna is the primary, essence of everything, and they don't talk about Krishna at all. They talk about quarks and string theory and black holes and quantum theory and this theory and that theory, and there's no mention at all of Krishna. See? So they obfuscate, they confuse the whole thing, they mislead people, they hide the truth, and they're, they have an aversion to God. They have what you would call a type of let's say a disease that hinders them from even mentioning the name of God. Or if they mention the name of God, it's in derision. It's to make fun of him or to insult him. So to be around people like that is very dangerous. We should not be around people like that. And also around people who have this profit incentive. They're always trying to make a profit. Just like there's one type of person who comes to Krishna consciousness is trying to become rich. So it's just like this person. He wanted me to start getting downlines. I would be his downline, and then I would get other people's downlines, right? So whenever a person is thinking like that, they can't preach properly. Their preaching has become my downline, because they want that money, and they want, because it represents sense gratification and power and prestige. So it's very dangerous. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma Bando Mui Savadana Mate Mando mui savadana mate Janara prasade bai He Bhavatori Ajay Krishna Prapti Hoya Hoite Krishna Prapti Hoya Hoite Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitete Koriya Arana Koriya Mane Asa Maranakori amane asa. Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Utamagati. Ye passade pure sarva asa. Ye passade pure sarva asa. Chakshudana dilaje janme janme Prabhu se. Chakshudan dilaje janme janme Prabhu se. Divya gyani de prakasito. Divya gyani de prakasito. Prema bhakti jaha hoite avidya vinasa jate. Prema bhakti jaha hoite avidya vinasa jate. Vedega janara charito. Vedega janara charito. Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adana Janara Bandhu. Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adana Janara Bandhu. Lokanath Lokera Jivana. Lokanath Lokera Jivana. Oh. Ha Prabhu Kuradoya Deha Mori Padachaya. Ha Prabhu Kuradoya Deha Mori Padachaya. Ebeyas Dusakti Bhuvana. Ebeyas Dusakti Bhuvana. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Haribo, Haribo, Gora Haribo, Nitai Gora Haribo, Nitai Gora Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nite Namine Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nite Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskatya Desatarine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskatya Desatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudhi Gaur Bhaktavinda Jaya Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaura Haribo, Haribo, Haribo. Nitai Gaura Haribo, Nitai Gaura Haribo, Haribo, Haribo. Nitai Gaura Haribo. Tagore Premanande Ki Jai. Jayo Vishnupad Paramahansa Pararajikachasta Tarasatarashi Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Anantakoti Vaishnavini Ki Jai. Namacharyas Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Shikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivedanta Shri Radha Krishna Go Gopinath Samakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Shri Mayapura Dham Ki Jai. Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Tulasi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Ganga Maya Ki Jai. Jamuna Maya Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Nitai Gaura Premanandi. Harinam Sankirtana Ki Jai. Nitai Gaura Premanandi. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada Patita Pavani Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vastaya Pati Samata Pati Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Jai Srila Prabhupada. The lotus feet of our spiritual master, the only way by which we can attain the pure devotional service. I bow down to his lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By his grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. I only wish to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is the perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him, ecstatic prema emanates. By him, ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, friend of the poor and Lord and master of the devotees. Oh, Master, be merciful unto us. Give us the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread throughout all the three worlds. We take shelter of lotus feet. Srila Prabhupada, Patita Pavan, Hari.